Welcome in to the Hoth Hangout podcast. We are on episode 19. We just realized it's crazy. We're getting up there in podcast numbers. Someday we'll even hit 100, hopefully. So
Coming
until
quick.
coming up quick, sooner than we think. Bad Batch season 2, episode 5, premiered yesterday. A much better episode, at least. Probably, I would expect both of our opinions would reflect that we thought that episode was probably much better than episode 4 from the previous
Or
week.
do we?
Or do
We'll
we?
find out.
That
We'll
is
find
what
out.
we will be discussing today. Before we hop into the action, Joey, how has your week been going, man?
Pretty good. I took a week off of streaming from Twitch this week. If you didn't know, me and Ben both do Twitch streaming as well. Took a break just to refresh a little bit, and get some changes to the stream. So it's been kind of nice not streaming for a little bit, but now we are back here, and I get a little bit more energy going into this episode while we for the podcast. So I'm excited. So if you want to go like a 2-3 hour podcast today, I'd be totally fine with it.
Yeah, we're gonna go for our record. What is our record? Do you think? Probably I think we did like an hour 40 one time, didn't we?
Oh, was it that long? Oh my gosh.
It was at least
thought-
an
I thought
hour
it was
and a
like-
half.
I thought it was closer to like hour 25 or something. I don't think it actually passed the hour and
It
a
was-
half. But
It was one of those. Anyways, it was one of those first Andor episodes where we were like, just we felt like. I mean, to be fair, we kind of can talk forever about it if we really
Yeah,
wanted
right.
to. Our current record stands at an hour 38. Yeah.
hour 38. Which
Yeah.
episode was that?
Looks like it was actually later than I thought it was. It was episode. Oh, where did I just see that? Oh no, it was the Tales of the Jedi breakdown, is what it was. So it wasn't Andor at all.
See,
Yeah.
I mean that's 6 episodes.
Yeah, we were breaking down a
mean-
whole
I mean,
show.
That makes sense.
That's
you
our
know, it's
excuse.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do it again though. Season 2, Tales of the Jedi. Make it happen.
Imagine each Bad Batch episode we talked about for an hour and a half. Can you imagine that? This episode was only, I think, on paper it was 30 minutes, but in actuality, that ends up being somewhere closer to like 27 or so. So not the shortest episode, but I don't think it was the longest episode of the season yet. But nonetheless, probably one of my more liked episodes this season, I would say. Kind of a general overview of the episode before we dive even deeper. It almost felt sort of like another treasure hunt, which I thought initially I was kind of like, oh no, here we go again. We've got another episode that doesn't really go anywhere in the long run. We're not gonna get a ton out of this story wise. Which there's a little bit of truth to that, but and I imagine we'll talk about this here in a bit, but they really they touch on some lore stuff, which is, I think, what gets all the Star Wars junkies like, oh, wait, well, they're talking about what? Like, now I'm interested. Now my interest is piqued. But basically, all the Bad Batch this time, it's still very odd that the other ones weren't included in that last episode, I think.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
all the Bad Batch, minus Crosshair, of course, goes on this mission. We get reintroduced to this Wanda Sykes character. Her name is Fee. She's kind of the one leading this treasure quest. It almost felt like something out of an Indiana Jones movie at certain points during this episode. And ultimately, it's like this temple-like thing. We're not really sure exactly what it is. And at one point, there's like a creature that's tracking them. They get separated and then eventually meet back up. And then it all culminates in what I referred to as a giant robot dinosaur with a mini Death Star laser. And I did not know how else to describe that other than as such. And in the
Yes.
process, they kind of... This was the part of the episode that I was like, really? They go for this treasure. They get the treasure. It's like, no, we need to put the treasure back in order to blah, blah, blah. You're like, okay, whatever. So, all in all, I enjoyed the episode. So that was, I guess, my brief synopsis of it. Looking at the episode as a whole, was there anything that you particularly enjoyed or did not enjoy about it? Anything that stood out to you?
Well, the first thing I had here in my notes that's written and underlined is the Bad Batch and the Temple of Doom. So
Indiana Jones, I'm telling
Indiana
you.
Jones. It was absolutely an Indiana Jones throwback here, or it was definitely referring, just had those vibes the entire time. You had the crystal that they were trying to get. I swear, I thought they were going to have to replace it with something with the same weight.
A bag of sand.
I was waiting for that to happen, but so it had a lot of those, those things that you would see in an Indiana Jones movie. You had a bunch of puzzles that they had to figure out, one artifact that helped throughout the entire course, and um, and just like what was the very last Indiana Jones
The
that
most recent
everyone didn't
one,
like?
the fourth one is Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Was that, didn't it get all UFO
Yes,
kind of
it's
where?
very centered kind of around the concept of aliens.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I felt at the end of this episode, where I'm just like, where did this mech robot come from? Like it was
Yeah.
just chilling there. Because I mean that what they said, what Fee said early on was like, yeah, this is old.
Right.
This is some old stuff. This
Older
is
than the Jedi, I think is what
older
she
than the
says.
Jedi back in the before, in Texas, before the Republic, and
Mm.
so this is very old things, and I'm like, how do they had all this back then? I had no idea, but no, but even early on, whenever I watch these episodes, I think about like, oh, wait, what are me and Ben going to talk about here? So I'm trying to get these points. So obviously the Indiana Jones, the parallels were there. But early on, just like you probably, I saw the writings on the wall. I'm like, oh, it's another mission. This is something else. Now it's not even something from Sid. Now it's something that Omega found. Omega, was the one that found that compass in the junkyard with Wrecker there in the beginning,
Mhm.
and that was kind of what launched them into this mission, this treasure hunt, which we find out that Fee is, she's kind of this treasure hunter slash pirate, that kind of goes around and does this kind of stuff. So she's very knowledgeable about the lore of these types of old artifacts, and what they can do. And you never know how much she actually knows, because early on she's telling the story to the two guys in the cantina there, the story, and then the Bad Batch was like, oh, that story changes every time, and so you kind of get an idea a little bit more about who Fee is. But she does seem to be knowledgeable about everything, at least in this case. So pretty good. I thought that was a pretty good development for her. We got like pretty much a whole episode with her, which I did enjoy her character a lot. There were moments where I'm just like, is she telling the truth? And you just
Right.
have no idea, so you kind of waiting. But another person that kind of really stepped up here is Omega, because pretty much every single turn she was the one that figured out the lights and the puzzles, and what they needed to do. Meanwhile, Hunter's just walking straight and just falling into holes, and so so we're seeing once again Omega's growth and her value to the Bad Batch. But yeah, overall, fun episode. Early, like I said, early on, I'm like, oh, this is another mission episode, so I got a little bit worried, but I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna roll with it. This is what it's gonna be. I'm gonna let it happen. This is gonna be fun, and I had a lot of fun watching it, actually.
Yeah, I think early on, like you said, you know what it reminded me of, honestly. There was to me, the first 3 or 4 minutes of this episode felt very much like the part of Rise of Skywalker where Rey is holding some Sith artifact or something, and she like
Yeah.
holds it
Oh,
up
yeah, yeah.
and like somehow aligns, and you're just like, what? Like,
What?
yeah. The part of this episode where is it Omega who holds? I guess it's a little later on than the first 3 or 4 minutes, but she
Yeah, yeah.
finds the it's
The
a compass.
compass.
Yeah, she finds the compass early, and then later in the episode, she like holds it up to like a shape or something, and I was like,
Right.
are we taking cues from episode 9 now? I was very confused by that part in particular. I was like, how does that work? So that was a funny parallel. I don't think that was intentional.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
it'd be hilarious if it was, if they like unironically were making fun of episode 9 by doing that. Uh, that was a weird parallel. I also drew from the episodes. I felt like, and this is another thing with Fee's character you were briefly mentioning. It's hard to tell a lot of the times like what stories she's making up and what is truth and what is false. Um, there were so many like name drops of not necessarily people, but like places and things. I mean, I had a list here, and I was like, she just keeps like saying stuff I've never heard before. She's
Hmm.
talking about the Kaldar trinary system. She mentioned Skara Wall, which is apparently the heart of the mountain. This is when she's talking about it being older than the Jedi. I feel like there was another one that I wrote down. At the end, she's talking about like some chalice with
Hmm.
called Elways or something. I don't know.
Right.
It was just all sorts of like name dropping. Early in the episode, she's talking to the two other people in the whatever they call it. I don't know if it's cantina or not, but in the little hideout area, and she's
Hmm.
name dropping all kinds of other places. So, I mean, that'll be interesting to see if that is something for us to chew on as Star Wars fans. Then it comes back a couple years later. It's like, oh, that was that place Fee was talking about,
Right.
or whether it's just kind of all you know out the side of her mouth, and she's just kind of like making this stuff up, and whether we'll ever hear or see from it again. Uh,
Right.
that'll be kind of interesting to see if it comes back around. Did you watch this episode with subtitles, by the way?
I did. Yes.
Okay,
Always.
I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit,
No,
but
that's fine.
the dinosaur looking thing that apparently like exploded out of the mountain when they took the crystal thing. Um, did you see what it was referred to in the subtitles?
It was called MECH, right? Wasn't it called
Yeah,
a MECH?
I thought that was so interesting that they
Right.
chose to call it anything, but also mech.
Yeah.
Do you think there's anything? I mean, what did you think about that? Do you think there's anything behind that nomenclature, or is that
I
just
mean,
kind of something the
here's what
show?
I hope that this is not the only one that we see.
Sure, yeah.
Whether it's in Bad Batch or in some other Star Wars story, I would really like to see a little bit more of because this came out of nowhere. Like
Yeah.
of all the things that I was going to expect going when they put when they took out the heart of the mountain, that was like I had no idea that that was going to happen. And oh, can we get a O7s to the droid Mel? That did not make it out of that. For the very small, because you and I we've talked about like droids and their importance and in stories and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Although Mel had a very short time on screen, I kind of felt bad when we saw Mel get lit up by
Yeah.
that mech.
Which, by the way, I was gonna ask a question about the Mel, right?
Hmm.
I was gonna ask a question about Mel. So the first time in the episode, maybe I wasn't paying attention, but the first time in the episode I saw him was like as the mech was coming out of the mountain. Was he in the
Oh,
episode
really?
before that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Really?
yeah. Yeah, when
I don't
you
know
I think
where I was.
I don't remember. I think even early as the or whatever it is, the cantina, the hideout spot. Mel was there
Are you
because
serious?
because Mel was the one that because
Wow.
Fee even consults Mel like, hey, do we know what this is or something like that?
Oh, okay. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, that is like crazy to me that I
Wow.
like
So
did
that's
not
even
even.
so you even thought even short. I mean, Mel went inside of the tower slash mech thing
Yeah, I
kind of
was.
early
I
on.
was
Yeah.
like, who is this droid? And then he, he just. So I don't know where I was
Oh,
during that part of the episode. My brain must
wow.
have been just
Yeah,
not
that
plugged in
that must
completely.
have been very confusing to see like where did this droid come from? It just kind of hangs out here. Yeah. No, but so O sevens to Mel
Yep.
and normally, you I don't know, Fee kind of just said, "Oh, I could just rebuild them." I mean, it was it seemed kind of like, like you normally have more of a connection with the droids whatever,
Yeah,
but Fee was just like, I got all of his data backed up, I'll just rebuild him, no big deal. Which is good. I mean, it's if you don't have your stuff backed up, it's a very smart idea.
it was akin to the Mos Eisley Cantina bartender, just like he's anti droids, like just
Right. Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
care. Not they
Exactly.
don't have feelings, that kind of person.
Right, exactly. Well, and one thing I did want to mention here is I don't know if you've read the book Force Collector.
No,
I don't remember the entire story of Force Collector, but it was essentially this force sensitive boy who was his best power was he's able to kind of touch artifacts and see what had happened with them.
huh.
If you think about that happened with Ray when she got that knife, the dagger that was the same dagger that ended up killing her parents, and that was the one from Rise of Skywalker. So same type of force skill that she had. So this boy also has it during this book. Now, the whole book he is running around finding these artifacts, finding things that go back to like Obi-Wan and all these things, so he's able to kind of grasp them and then have this kind of force feeling, whatever, and is able to go through it. So this kind of made me had those feels because it was all like it when you think of like Indiana Jones, I want to keep going back to that. When you go back to like Indiana Jones, he's like this treasure hunter trying to figure out all these things. So he goes through all these well, not, I guess he doesn't go to planets, but he go all these places where he's finding these artifacts that are really important. And so it kind of had that feel to me too. And I'm like, oh, maybe. And there was one moment in the episode where Fee does, and I'm trying to remember where it was. Fee puts her hand out, and I'm like, she's not force sensitive. And so this is going to be my conspiracy theory here, is that Fee is
Force
somewhat
sensitive?
force sensitive. So I'm just
Interesting.
jumping on the deep end of this one because she oh no, this is where it was. It was in the when they first got into that temple or whatever, that mech that we find out.
Hmm.
She's unable to like move the rock, so she has a record do it.
Hmm.
Kind of early on. So like I forget what she calls them, big shoulders. I can't remember, whatever. She always has the nicknames. But she puts her hand out, and I think it's probably because she feels something there, and I don't know. But she doesn't try to move the rock. She just like puts her hand out, and just that quick beat. It's a familiar beat that you see in Star Wars a lot. You
Yeah.
just kind of put the hand out, and it might be a throwaway thing, whatever. But I'm gonna go all in and say Fee is force sensitive.
Interesting. I like the idea of it. However, there's something about if you I mean, for those that are familiar with Wanda Sykes, I don't recall seeing her in a role that wasn't somehow connected to humor or comedy.
Hmm.
And so having Wanda Sykes play like the role of someone who's hiding something that's actually like a big secret, as much as being force sensitive, it's hard for me to like pair those two things together. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Just
So
because of her history
her
of the
personality
roles
and
that
like the
yeah,
type of
yeah.
shows she does and who she like, she's hilarious. She's great.
Right, yes.
From that angle, I'm like, I can't see it, but like as a character, I think it would be cool.
Right.
And I think she could easily pull it off. I'm not saying she can't pull off that
Right.
that role or anything, but um, I find it. I'm a bit skeptical of it now. Maybe I'll put that as my stance.
Yes, that's all right. Hey man, I'm here to raise some eyebrows, you know what I mean? Just be like,
Yeah, yeah,
"Oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's an interesting take on that."
yeah. Which, speaking of force sensitive stuff, at what point in this show do you think we're going to be? And maybe this is a two-part question. Part of it is more looking towards the future with the rest of the Bad Batch season 2, but then also um, thinking about this episode within the greater arc of Bad Batch, how it relates to the Star Wars universe as a whole. Um, is I would imagine that this is not just something that they're like, you know what we should do for episode 5? We should just throw some mech thing in there associated with some ancient mystical magical stuff, which also is kind of akin to Indiana Jones too, if you think
Yeah,
about it.
right.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
there's always some connection to like something magic or mystical in Indiana Jones. So that's another parallel with this episode. Um, do you think and the reason I bring this up, it's because there has been talk of Star Wars kind of going more in the direction of like magical and mystical and stuff that's not, so easily explainable. Kind of like the direction we saw Rebels go a little bit with,
Mm,
the Bendu
right, right.
and even like before that in Clone Wars with like I think it was the father and
Yes.
the son
And the daughter, yeah.
and the daughter. Stuff like
Mortis.
Mortis, yeah, and stuff like that. I'm not opposed to Star Wars going in that direction, and I feel like this episode kind of falls in that realm as well. And I don't know if it is gearing up for something we're gonna see in another show, or even in Jedi Survivor, which comes out in a couple weeks. That's also a possibility. We could see a connection point there. Do you think this is something that will connect to future Star Wars content, or it's just kind of like something they're like, that'd be fun to throw in there?
I think it's exactly that. And I said as much as that I really hope we get to see a little bit more of this. That things that we haven't seen in the Star Wars universe. Yes, we've seen the Jedi, we've seen Sith, we've seen clones, we've seen stormtroopers. We have not seen a 50-foot mech just blasting away at a planet. So and I'm trying to figure out like who made this thing that you
Yeah.
that you remove the heart of the mountain, and then this thing just goes crazy and just starts shooting up everything. I mean, doesn't seem like a great design. Um, but and one thing I was a little bit upset about was they returned it and it like melted. I'm like, well, how
Yeah.
does so what is the function there that once you remove it, you have to remove it forever, but if you try to replace it, it just melts it and just explodes and
Yeah. Does the
just
mech ever work again? Like, or do you have to
right,
get a new
yeah.
crystal? I don't know.
Right, yeah. So there's a lot of, as fun as this episode was, there's a couple of logistical points and I'm like, wait, I don't understand what even the point of this is, and hopefully at some point, whether it's, another show like you said, comic book, whatever. There needs to be a little bit of a discussion of what this was, because I mean, if we're talking before the Jedi, this is even before the newly released High Republic stuff that's out too. So it's
Hmm.
even before that, if that's what they're saying.
Right.
Before, and that's 600 years before what we know to be Episode 6 and all that. So I think the I think it should be I think it should be discussed a little bit more within Star Wars. I hope it really is. And we could always go to, different sides of the spectrum, just like you mentioned, like Bendu and Mortis and all that. There's so much around the Force. There's so many levels of having Force sensitivity that we could really explore. And Star Wars, honestly, I think has done a pretty good job at getting all that information and getting and seeing all those angles now. So yeah, I really do hope it's included somewhere in the future.
Yeah. I'm gonna put my tinfoil hat on for a second here. I I think this is something we may not come back to for a while. Um, I think actually Jedi Survivor is the best opportunity for us to come back to this, because I don't see this being really talked about or addressed as a part of the new season of Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Ahsoka. I don't really see a place for it there either. Um, Acolyte maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not sold on that either. Um, maybe more so than Mando and Ahsoka. But so I think there's two routes here. Route number one is maybe it's like somehow connected to the upcoming game release of Jedi Survivor. Um, or the tinfoil hat prediction is that this just sits there for like 3 years with people asking
Mm-hmm.
questions like, what was that thing? Like, what is older
Right.
than the
Yeah.
Jedi? Where does this magic come
Right.
from?
Right.
And then we finally get like some like pre Old Republic show that we've been waiting for, and it's just
Mm-hmm. Right.
like
Yeah.
this is where that thing was from. You know what I mean? There's an
Right.
army
Yeah.
of mechs walking around, like
Right.
so.
Right.
I don't think we'll get a full explanation for the background of this episode in the near future, and I'm kind of okay with it. I like
Yeah.
the mystical side of things, especially within Star Wars, and I'm curious the direction they take this.
And honestly, the longer that they take to explain it, the better the payoff is going to be.
Yeah, it builds it
Because
up
if it
more.
if it if it truly is 2-3 years down the road, when you and I are on our 300th episode, wherever it is, um, then we're gonna go like, oh, do you remember from Bad Batch season 2, episode 5, that mech?
Episode
Yeah,
378, the mech is back.
yeah, right. The Empire Strikes Back with the mech. Yeah, so, um, yeah, so I think it would be. Yeah, I think I'm with you. It was a cool piece of tech, and if they just let it lie for a little bit, that'd be cool. If it comes up in Jedi Survivor, that'd be nice too. Now that you mention it, there are some in the because I'm doing the Jedi Fallen Order playthrough right now.
Hmm.
There is like this armored knight thing. I don't know the name of it, but it essentially has a very strong like laser that's in the chest, just like
Mm.
the mech does.
Same
So
technology.
it's pretty. I mean, yeah, it really does look like it now that you mention it. So, maybe there is some tie-in from that particular armored knight to back to the mechs. I mean, I don't know, but it would be something that, yeah, maybe Jedi Survivor is where it's at. But either way, uh, fun episode. I enjoyed all the little tidbits that now we're all gonna have to Google on Wikipedia. Not sponsored. And we're gonna have to take a look and see what all these things are. The Kaldar, what is it? Trinary system and
Yeah, yeah.
everything like that. So, but yeah, as far as for the season, yeah, a better one, especially with this Bad Batch group. I think it was definitely one of the better ones that they've produced so far.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I preferred it much to the last episode.
Same.
Although, to be honest, I don't I don't think the episode was like over the top. Wow, that was the best one of the season.
Right.
I just think there was so much new stuff that it didn't feel stale, even though they were kind of still doing the same thing that they've been doing the whole season,
Hmm.
which is maybe the last point that I want to bring up, that while we did get a ton of cool lore stuff in this episode, we were introduced to, I think, a brand new creature. I don't, at least
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah. I
recognize
didn't
what that
recognize it.
creature
Hmm.
was that attacked, the Bad Batch inside the cave, and obviously the mech, which we've talked about, and all this new technology, and the crystal, and all this different stuff that's cited as being older than the Jedi. Like, when are we going to find out more about this? All that is really cool. It gets us excited. It's the highlight of the episode. What I'm also more worried about, putting all that aside, is if you think about it, the story still didn't progress anywhere.
I know. Yeah. I know.
Which at this point, I'm resigned to being okay with the fact that Bad Batch is probably not going to progress very uh, anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to say anywhere, but I think the core of this story that is a missed opportunity to not focus on is the dynamic between Crosshair and the other Bad Batch members, particularly Hunter and Omega. And it feels like they exhausted a lot of that in season 1, to the point where they were like, I guess we can make season 2 kind of like, uh, if you're, equating it to something in the video game world, just a massive DLC where every episode
Right.
is a
Yeah.
treasure hunt. And it'll
Right.
be great. It'll be fun. Which, there's some episodes that have been better than others. And, like this one, it was a really fun episode. I loved it. But ultimately, the story doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, which is kind of what's saddening to me about the show. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, at least on DLCs, you actually collect the treasure and bring it back.
Yeah, true.
That's a pretty, if I'm gonna
Are
pay
we
for a DLC.
are we 0 for 4 on treasures? Like,
Yeah,
I
it
think they
feels
said
like
0
it.
for 2, and I was
Over
like,
two, yeah,
you've
yeah.
got on more than 2 of these things, I think. I don't know, but
Well, we don't know how the chicken nuggets
oh
mission
yeah,
went. Yeah, so they
yeah,
may have gotten those, and but it was definitely the Dooku treasure. They definitely didn't
right,
come anything with that. And now I think, and then this would be the second. I think that those are the two that they're referring to. But
yeah.
like I said, it would be great if they brought something back. If they brought back that the heart of the mountain, that would be very nice to have brought back. And because you could tell that, although very fun, and it was totally that moment where they're just like, oh, we didn't get it, but it was really fun. And then Fee's like, this girl gets it. I'm like, oh my. And but that's just gonna be, and I think we just have to accept it. That's just gonna be the theme for at least a couple more episodes, maybe. I don't know.
I think
For the Bad Batch
definitely
side,
next week too is going to be like a treasure hunt episode.
is there a name for it already?
I haven't looked, but I can check real quick.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we get the episode 7 and 8 together in the same week,
Hmm.
or in the same premiere at the same time. I'm a little bit more hopeful for that one, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, next week's episode has already been titled Tribe, so something to chew on. This week's episode was Entombed,
Entombed. Yeah.
in which our heroes almost were entombed.
Yes. No. Overall, I enjoyed the episode. I think it was just it was a fun episode. Like, if you haven't watched Indiana Jones, maybe it doesn't hit you as much as it does to to us who really love it. And I just remembered if you mentioned a chalice at the end of there, maybe that's a throwback to Last Crusade where they're
Yeah,
looking for
yeah.
the Holy Grail and whatever. Um, so I really I enjoyed it. I found myself smiling a lot during it, or even just like, ooh, I wonder what that is. I wonder what that item is
Mm.
about. And so I think it was a good episode as far as the storyline, like you said, for the Bad Batch. Not much movement, if at all. Like I said, maybe there's a couple of things that we pick from it. Omega is still kind of you know proving her value to the crew. Fee, I don't know if we see Fee anymore during this season, but I have a feeling we do at least one more time. Um, because as I said, she is force sensitive. So I mean, you're gonna not have her, you're gonna have her. So yeah. But for next week, here's my hope for next week. I hope next week is a Crosshair episode
Mm.
where kind of it it is like a starts off into the next two episodes. That's kind of what I'm hoping, that it transitions us to the next two episodes, with which then will be a bigger deal with both the Bad Batch and Crosshair, and you just kind of have this crossover or something like that. Maybe we finally see a Bail Organa. Maybe we get some other cameos in there as well. So although maybe it wasn't moving the story along, I did enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, this will by the time next week's episode rolls around, it'll have been 3 weeks since we've seen Crosshair. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would love to get it. Like, I mean, Crosshair is probably my favorite one of the group,
Yeah, yeah,
unironically. So
yeah.
hopefully we get to see him at some point in next. And Cody, I want to know where Cody goes from here
Right,
too.
yeah.
There's so much that I think Bad Batch can offer that I hope it does offer in the rest of the season. And I think it will at some point. It's just a matter of how quickly are we going to get there.
Right.
Well, in addition to Bad Batch, lots and lots and lots of fun Star Wars content coming up, including Ahsoka in early, or no, I'm sorry, Mandalorian season 3 in early March. Ahsoka later on in 2023. Bad Batch, or excuse me, Jedi Survivor. We've been talking about Jedi Survivor this whole pod, not this whole pod. Mentioned it a few times, but that comes out as well. I had the official release date for that here a second ago.
March 17th or 16th,
March
somewhere on there.
16th. I think that's correct. So lots of fun Star Wars stuff coming our way, both in early and mid March. I guess one thing I did forget to do before we kind of sign off. What was your episode grade? I don't know if we gave this one a grade yet.
Yeah, we didn't give it a grade yet. I mean, because what did we give the last one? Did we give it a D? Something like
I
that? I think we
was
both
I
gave it a
was
D
ge-
plus.
yeah, I was generous with something in the D range.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna give us a B minus. B minus because it was fun. It may not have moved the story along, but in lieu of that, it gave me the Indiana Jones feel. So nicely done on that. If you're not gonna offer me anything like story wise, at least let me have a good time watching it. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a B minus.
All right, B minus. Do I want to go with here? I would say that is a fair grade. I'm actually gonna have to agree. I was gonna go with a C, but the more we talked about the episode, the more it made me excited about the future of the incorporation of a lot of the elements of the mech and sort of the more magical side of Star Wars. Hopefully, in future Star Wars content. So I will agree with you and kind of take the cop out route and say I'm also gonna go with a B minus. Uh, but again, looking forward to the rest of season 2. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong. Is there a week break between episodes 7 and 8 and 9, or it just
I
continuously goes
I
through?
think it straight goes through,
Okay,
if I'm not
so
mistaken.
continuous Bad Batch content coming weekly then. So next week we'll be covering episode 6. The following week we'll be covering episodes 7 and 8. I think we already mapped it out. Is it episode 11 of the Bad Batch that premieres the same week as Mandalorian?
I believe it's around that time, if that's not the accurate one. Yeah.
So at certain points in early March, we may be uploading on the YouTube channel as many times as potentially 3 in the same week. We'll
Yeah.
see.
We do a reaction video maybe, and yeah.
Yeah. Which, by
Could
the
happen.
way, I should also mention, if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple or anywhere you listen to your podcasts, and you're not subscribed to the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel, feel free to check it out. We do post content over there other than just the podcast that you listen to on Spotify or Apple, including reaction videos like Joey just mentioned. So definitely check that out as we continue the grind towards the 100 subs mark, getting closer and closer every day.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I appreciate each and every single one of you so much for listening to the pod. We're excited to cover the rest of Bad Batch, Mando, Ahsoka, Jedi Survivor. We may even do some sort of a playthrough here on the channel, so be on the lookout for that as well. Lots of fun stuff coming your way, and including if you'd like to send us any questions regarding Star Wars content or anything else at any point. Ask us what our favorite food is or something like that. You can also tweet at us at Hoth Hangout over on Twitter, or send us an email, hothhangout@gmail.com. Any last thoughts before we sign off on this one, Joey?
Jedi Master Fee. Make it happen.
What about Sith? What if Snoke? He is Snoke. New theory.
We got it.
We'll be here to confirm or possibly deny either of those theories. And until the next one, thanks again for listening to the Hoth Hangout podcast. May the Force be with you.